Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to today's session of our wonderful interviews with our wonderful independent instructors and guests. And once again, this is Thumim NG bringing to you this amazing session with Dr. Ogochukwu Okpala on how women manipulate their period cycles and what it means to everyone. And of course, right now you're still seeing me. You are not seeing our wonderful guests. But then, as usual, I'll have to introduce her to you and you see the amazing person we are talking about. I mean, when she starts spitting knowledge, you know that something is really here and you're going to enjoy the interaction today. So come ready with your questions. Come and bombard us as always. We are ever prepared for you. And I remain your host, Dr. Ifnaya Stella Maris Anyan, also known as Dr. STM. And we are happy to have you here today. Just before I bring in our guests, I would want you to please click the share button, copy the link of this video, and make the noise about this interview session. Invite your friends, invite your family, invite your colleagues, let them come and join us as we just pieces this discussion about menstrual cycles and manipulating their period cycles. Really, it's going to be a hot one today. And as usual, you can drop your comments in the live comment section, and we get to see it. And of course, put it up here just the way you're seeing the title on the screen, and our guest can certainly answer your questions. Once again, you're welcome to the show, and this is our guest for today, Dr. Ogoshuku Okbala. And I'll quickly talk about her before we also get into bring her into the studio. So Dr. Ogoshuku is a board certified, Harvard educated obstetrics and a gynecology specialist. She has a passion for writing and teaching, and she has been a doctor for almost 20 years. Special interests are on polycystic ovarian syndrome and fertility. And she has two wonderful daughters, 8 and 10 years, and she's passionate about the Rotary Club and service. I'm sure that Rotarians here will just be happy to know that our guest today is just a member who is not just a member, but passionate about that. And we are happy to have Dr. Ogochukwu Okpala in the house today. Yay! Hi,
Hello.
Doc. Yeah,
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And how are you doing too?
Great, thank you. Yes, my dad will be very happy about that Rotarian comment. He's a big, he's very passionate about the Rotary.
Oh, we are happy to hear that, and we are
Yeah.
so happy to have you here. I'm sure that your guests who joined in today, who are Rotarians, will be making a whole of
Yep.
noise. Ah,
Yep.
Rotarians in the building, because I know how Rotarians do their things.
Yes.
And of course, today we'll be having this discussion on how women manipulate their period cycles and what it means to everyone. And of course, I mean, before we start talking about it, let's just hear a few words, talk to your listeners, just what you feel about the session, how you feel, and what you want to just hear them here before we go into the main thing.
Okay, yes, this is an interesting topic. I know it's titled sort of provocatively, but there's a lot of reasons why people would want to manipulate the period cycles. I'm always surprised when people come in and I tell them ways to do it. For instance, if someone has a big exam, travel, a wedding, to attend, and they're worried about, having maybe the first 2 heavy days of their period. There are ways to stop your period from coming on. I want to talk about whether a lot of people think it may be harmful. We'll talk about all those things. Of course, there's the issue of paternity fraud. I'll give some clues as how to calculate delivery dates so that the incidence of fraud will decrease. There isn't a very high incidence of paternity fraud, though. Contrary to belief.
All right, okay. I like the angle that you just brought in there about paternity fraud. Really, it's going to be quite controversial hearing why we start
Right.
talking about that because, well, a group is saying this is quite common, and another is saying, no, 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 it's not as common as we think. So
Right.
we'll get to see your perspective today, but of course, we'll dwell more on manipulating period cycles. And ladies and gentlemen, just in case you're wondering, Dr. Gochukwu Opala is also an independent instructor with Tumim NG. So let's start with what is Tumim NG, and then who is an independent instructor and what exactly is the big deal. All right, so Tumim NG is an online education platform belonging to Intelligent Healthcare Solutions where you can come and teach or come and seek for courses and learn. We have quite a diverse range of courses. We have courses on clinical skills, digital skills, business building, parenting, and more, including research courses. And you can get any of these courses at affordable rates, study at your pace, get skilled up, and power up and move furthermore into in your career range. And while you're learning, you can also share your knowledge as an instructor, just like Dr. Ogochukwu Okpala. So you can come to teach what you know. And trust me, you don't have to be a healthcare professional to teach just because to me NG has more of healthcare professional audience. Now, you can actually teach other things that are not clinically aligned. For example, you can be teaching about businesses, about having a medical business, or something about legal regulations and compliance. And all these things can also be tailored to healthcare professions. So you should come and share your knowledge while you are also getting knowledge from the platform. And we have about 15,000 subscribers on the platform. So you see, the worry is not about who is going to buy my course. The worry should be about you. Why have you not come to learn? And why have you not come to share your knowledge? And Dr. Ogochukwu Opala is one of our independent instructors. And what we mean by independent instructors is simply a course creator with Tumim NG. So she has a course on fertility. Of course, you've heard when we talked about she being interested in polycystic ovarian syndrome and fertility. And she has courses there where she actually fleshed out every single thing you need to know about these two domains, fertility and polycystic ovarian syndrome. Whatever you've heard about it, probably you keep asking questions, browsing through Google and YouTube, trying to know more. You know, when you're getting pieces of information and they are not synchronized, you tend to measure up everything and you can just make out quite tangible information and draw tangible conclusions from those things. But when you take this course, not only will you be having a robust information, but these things will be delivered sequentially so you understand in depth what this is all about. And that is why we are here, to teach you and to help you share what you know. Once again, thank you, Dr. Gochukwu for having this time, creating this time to share your knowledge with us and talk to your audience. We are having this time about manipulating period cycles. And I think before we talk about manipulation, we have to know what the normal is like. So the floor is for you now to just talk to us about normal menstrual cycle.
Yes, that's a great place to start actually, because before you manipulate anything, you have to know what the baseline menstrual period is. And again, I'm always surprised when people have no idea. I've had patients who come in with fertility issues, and I find out that the partner, the husband, is a long distance trucker that's here in the US, and he's never there, the middle of the month when she's ovulating. So how could you possibly get pregnant? So this is not always something that's taught in school. So that's a really good place to start. So the basic menstrual cycle is about 28 to 35 days on average. I think people usually use 28 to 30 days to calculate things. But if your period is shorter or longer, then the manipulation or your period and fertility times, most fertile times, are going to be different. So there are two phases to the menstrual cycle, two main phases, and those are the follicular and the luteal. So if you want to put up my graph of it, follicular and the luteal. The luteal tends to stay uh, constant, so it's about 14 days. And then the follicular, the first part is the one that can vary. And so the first day of bleeding is considered day one of the period. You have, I'm sure you've all seen that graph that goes, it's sort of like a, yes, it's coming up. Okay, good. You've all seen sort of a graph that the FSH goes low and then high. And then at 14, on the 14th day, is when you have what's called the LH, luteal hormone surge. The LH surge, that's identified if you look at the anterior pituitary hormones, that refers to LH, luteal hormone, and FSH, follicular stimulating hormone. That blue line represents the LH surge. With that comes an increase in temperature. With that comes an increase in progesterone. The green dotted line is or broken line is the FSH. So that luteal surge is what tells the body to release the egg and to increase the fluffiness of the endometrium to get ready for for fertility to happen, for the embryo to attach. So ovulation day 14 is the most important day in fertility. The egg, when it comes out, lasts about 24 hours. And so if you're not having sex, sexually active during that period, it's impossible to get pregnant. Now, there's a caveat. Sperm lasts about 5 to 6 days. So you can have sex about 5 days prior to that ovulation and still be able to get pregnant. But the day 14, the day of ovulation, the egg lasts for 24 hours. And once it's gone till the next cycle. So that, in essence, is the main part of what you want to understand about the menstrual cycle. Day 1 is the first day of bleeding. Day 14 is ovulation. And then day 28, usually 28 to 35 days, is the end of the period. So day 28 is sort of like day 0, when it starts all over again.
Excellent. When you're talking about this, I'm like, okay, the waves and how it's going. And sometimes
Right.
people have this thing of, no, my period cycle is always 28 days, it's always 26 days, it's always fixed. And I'm like, is that normal? Is the body not responding to some hormones? So let's just put up this question here. Is it normal for period cycles to be fixed per month?
That's a great question. Between the ages of 20 to 40, the mostly fertile years, the period actually stays about the same. But at the very beginning, menarche, which is when you start having periods, and then after age 40, the periods vary. So a teenager, or I think the mean age is about 10 for people to get their periods now. It's getting younger and younger. And so in the beginning, your periods are not going to be regular. We say the hypothalamic pituitary axis is not mature. That's the parts of the brain that release the hormones that organize this whole very intricate cycle. It's actually very fascinating, all the different things that have to happen for a menstrual cycle to happen, for fertility, for fertilization to happen, and then even the 9 months to having a baby. Very fascinating. And one thing goes wrong and the whole pathway is messed up. So below the age of 20, it's going to be irregular. After the age of 40, it actually tends to be a shorter period, but heavier. And so a lot of people come to me after age 40 with, I'm bleeding a bit too much, I'm soaking through my clothes, and that's when we have to deal with the too much bleeding. Between 20 and 40, if you have established your period, let's say 5 days, 7 days, whatever, periods are usually between 3 to 7 days, it tends to stay the same. Might change a little, one decade to the next, but between 20 and 40 should remain the same.
Okay, great. So let's now we've understood what the normal is like, how the whole thing like a cycle you start, and somewhere in the middle of the cycle you're ovulating. At the end of cycle, you start a new beginning again. So that's why it's called cycle. Yeah. So this thing about women manipulating their period cycles. Why would someone want to manipulate their cycle? I think we should start with the why before how they do it.
Right. So great question. And the crux of this whole thing, why would women want to, and why do they do it?
Yeah.
Um, I mentioned earlier that the biggest reason is, some sort of life event happening. In residency, when I was in residency for 4 years, I always joked that they used to bring in hormones by the truckload so that we wouldn't get pregnant. I don't know if that happens in residencies or medical schools there, but because if someone gets pregnant, we were 10 residents in each class. If one person gets pregnant, that means other people have to take up their work.
Duty.
Also,
Yeah.
people weren't if people weren't ready to get pregnant, that's a big issue. If people weren't ready to get pregnant, although that's more of a contraception thing, then you can use you would manipulate your period cycles. Some people wouldn't have a period for the whole year for 3 months. Another social reason is vacation, big events, weddings, a big talk you want to give. You're starting a new job. You don't want to be bothered about your period. When you're starting this new job, it can be awkward to be running to the bathroom all the time. There's so many reasons, usually social, and then I would say usually social, that women manipulate their period cycles.
Yeah, because I was just about talking about that, that it appears that the main reason for manipulating that is social, personal reasons,
Right.
not entirely for other, say, medical reasons. So I was to ask how, but we got a question from a visitor here who said, "Good evening, please. When you mean manipulation, do you mean constant intake of pills?" So I think she's ushering in the how question
Yeah.
for us.
Yes, so not necessarily constant. So, for instance, some people, we were talking about social, but actually medically, I just put someone on pills because her hemoglobin was down to 5. This is an 18-year-old girl with irregular bleeding, hemoglobin down to 5. Um, Normal would be 11 to 13. We're still doing investigations to find out if she has some other reason for bleeding so much. But hemoglobin of 5 is hardly even compatible with life. I couldn't believe she walked into my office, straight. She was feeling dizzy, but that just shows you how the body sort of compensates. So there are many different things you can do, many different hormones, and it usually does consist of hormones. The way you manipulate a period is through hormones. And you can do the Nuva ring. There's a little ring that goes inside you, the IUD, intrauterine device. If you're taking the pill, depending on when you want to stop the period, you can take it a month at a time. If you have a wedding, take it 3 months before to suppress the menstruation, and then after that, stop. But yes, you take the pills as needed to suppress it.
Okay, now somehow these pills definitely are based on hormones, so they are mostly used for contraception.
Correct.
And we know just based on the law of life, for every action there is a reaction. So when one is taking, because it's one thing you're taking a pill for contraception, is and it's another thing you're taking it mainly you just don't want your period to come up.
Right.
Are there different consequences in these two cases? Or is it the same consequence of having to take it for contraception that the person faces?
Great question. So, if you're suppressing your cycle, you're still doing, it still has a contraceptive effect. What I find, and what I think you're asking, is that a lot of people think when you suppress the period, when you suppress yourself from having menses, where does that blood go? That's the question I
Most
get
if
asked. Right.
okay.
And so people think, oh no, I have to have a period every month so that blood comes out. Well, what happens, as you remember from that menstrual cycle that we that we showed at the beginning, if you suppress the cycle and you don't ovulate, then you're not going to have that increase in LH, FSH, all that. You're not going to have that proliferation of the endometrium, which is that second part or luteal phase of the cycle. So you don't get that thickening of the endometrium. So there is nothing to shed. So you're not having that reaction. If you see that, you're blocking ovulation, you're blocking that LH surge. So that thickening that you see, that endometrial cycle at the bottom, that thickening you see never happens. It just, the endometrium, which is the lining of the uterus, just sort of stays stable, stays at this low level. So by continually taking the pill, you're not building up lining on the inside of you. What you're actually doing is keeping it at a steady low state so that there isn't anything to come out. And so then when you stop taking the pill, you don't have a great big gush of, the blood that's been stored or anything, because there is no blood that has been stored.
Oh, yeah, because nothing built up. So now the question goes, how long can one safely manipulate this in like block of menstruation? How long safely is
Yeah.
the adverb there? When, because you can
Um,
manipulate for a long time and it becomes a
yeah.
problem.
Well, people, there's something called Depo-Provera that a lot of people use here. It's an injectable, it's a progesterone, and people are on it. I think the longest I've seen someone on it is like 20 years, and people have gone 20 years without a period. There's, as you said, there's always a pros and cons to everything. When you use that Depo-Provera, it can lead to other things like loss of bone mass, because you do need estrogen to maximize your bone in your body. But I've seen people. I don't think there have been any studies done specifically that I know of, but anecdotally, you can suppress it as long as you want to. Now, with the pill, I usually recommend every 3 months. Um, and that's just based on the fact that they actually make pills, I think it's called Yaz, that actually come in an 84 pack. So for that very purpose, an 84 pack of pills, and then the 7 days of placebo. So you take the pills, and you won't have your period for those 84 days, and after that you do the 7 days of placebo in which you have your pills. If you don't have that 84 pack, what people usually do, the packs come in a pack of 28. You have the 21 active pills and then the 7 inactive pills. So what you would do is you would take the 21 active pills and then toss the pack away and start a new pack. And you can do that. You can do it 3 or 4 times to have 3 months without a period.
Interesting. So if this person has blocked off period for say 1 year,
Right.
no period at all, and eventually this person wants to restart the period, are there going to be some consequences? Will the period start off flowing normally? And can the person get pregnant within the first month or second month after stopping this whole hormonal pills?
Great question. With the pill, yes. The one, and with the IUD, yes. The one birth control that can have a delay of return to fertility is that Lupron, that Depo-Provera that I talked about. I'm sorry, I'm using Depo-Lupron and Depo-Provera interchangeably. They're not necessarily interchangeable. Depo-Provera is what we use for contraception here in the US. And so with the Depo-Provera, it causes such a thinning out of the endometrial lining, which is the lining of the inside of the uterus, that it can take some time to return to fertility, up to a year. But if it's the pills, it goes right back to normal.
Oh, interesting. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Dr. Ogochukwu Okbala, and we've been talking on how women manipulate their period cycles and what it means to everyone. So we've talked about the normal cycle, what it looks like, and we've also talked about what it means to manipulate cycle, why women manipulate cycle and how they do it. After this short interlude that I'm talking now, we may now start talking about what it means to everyone, everyone around the woman who is manipulating the cycle. And once again, this is Tumim NG bringing this session to you with Dr. Ogochukwu Obala. Just like I said earlier, Tumim NG is an online education platform particularly for healthcare professionals, where you can either teach or you can come to learn. We have a diverse range of courses. We have courses on research, digital skills, clinical skills, parenting skills, and you can be the teacher even while you're a student. So you can just come to share your knowledge, and it doesn't have to be a healthcare related knowledge because doctors, nurses, pharmacists, all healthcare professionals get involved in business, so you can teach something about business. You can also teach something concerning legal matters and what you feel is relevant for people to grow. Just like in digital skills, you may even teach something like graphics designing. So these are wide range of examples that you can teach, and people who have needs will certainly buy your courses and learn from your wealth of knowledge. Thank you, Dr. Gochukobala, for joining us in today. And my audience, if you have any question, comments, suggestions, side remark, anything, sure, you can drop it there in the comment section and we'll get to highlight it just like this one I'm showing off now, and we'll see it, and our guest, if it's a question, will certainly address your question. Thank you once again. And Dr. Gochuku, I just like the way you're taking these questions one by one and delivering what needs to be delivered. So now a lady has decided to manipulate her period cycle for, say, 2 full years because she wants to get into an educational program that is quite demanding. And not only about her, because we said, okay, what about her? Aren't there consequences? For example, when we're talking about fertility and the bone density and such things. So now let's exclude the individual consequences. What about the family, the community, the society at large? Does these things have direct or indirect consequences?
I think people are always, I hear from a lot of friends of mine, usually male friends, about trying to figure out when the due dates of their partners are. Again, I want to stress it's not, I don't believe it's as big an issue as they tend to think it is. But it has actually changed some social norms in different parts of the countries. In some places, there are people who will not get officially married until their partner has had a baby and a DNA test has been done. That may reflect some sort of paranoia, but maybe we can save you the cost of that DNA test by understanding how to calculate the due date. So the way to calculate the due date of someone, the easiest way, of course, there are little wheels that OBGYNs use. You can use the apps. I think most people just use apps now. But if someone comes to you and tells you that their last menstrual period was, XYZ. So for instance, today, 5/22/22, or in Nigeria, 22/5/22. There's something called Nagel's rule that makes it very easy to calculate a due date. So, for instance, what you do is you take the date of the last menstrual period, you go back by 3 months, and then you add 7 days. So, if my last menstrual period is today, then my due date would be 3 months back, which is February 20th or 19th, and then you add 7. So my due date would be February 26th, obviously the next year, February 26th, 2023. And of course, it can vary depending on, for instance, like if it's a leap year, whenever February is involved, there's going to be differences. It's going to depend on if you actually do have a 28-day cycle versus 35. It could depend on, if you're on any medication, when exactly within that cycle. So day 1, as we remember, is the first day of the cycle, but day 14 is ovulation. That can vary just a little bit. So, but you should be able to get that due date within within a week, plus or minus a week. And so that is a way of figuring that out. Like I said, there's social, medical, familial repercussions to if someone changes, manipulates their period cycles, um, and to be able to manipulate when they're supposed to have a due date.
Oh, great. Excellent. So, manipulating, manipulating period cycles, of course, just like everything in life, has its own pros and cons. And it's just about being mindful of what the decision you're making and why you're making it, obviously. And ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Dr. Gochukwu Bala. Now, you've seen how well versed she is in the cases of obstetrics and gynecology. And Dr. Gochukwu Bala is an independent instructor with us, aka she is a course creator. She is a course owner with Thumim NG. So you can see that she is not just coming here to talk. She has also expressed that passion she said she has about teaching, where she gave the in-depth thing about her areas of interest, fertility, and polycystic ovarian syndrome. And of course, you can definitely get it from our website. Now, if you have any need to contact us or to check out her courses, you can see the ticker comment going down there. You can see our mail, you can see the phone number, and you can see the website. And don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel because we bring you content like this on different things where people talk about their well knowledgeable areas and you get to know more about what things are happening. We've had sessions on health related courses. We've had a session on education. We've had another session on social media. So you can see it's quite wide and you can really learn. And we are happy to have Dr. Gochukwu today because she's been talking about normal menstruation cycle. And even before now, she had to send me a picture like, I am passionate about this. And I know people learn better when they are seeing something. Please make sure you share this picture so you can see how she's just doing everything to ensure she gives you that knowledge we are sending out to you. Now, she used the picture to describe what a normal cycle is like. And she also used it to describe what is happening when a lady is manipulating her cycle. Most importantly, she's not storing blood anywhere because there was no blood even produced at the first place. Because according to her, that's the commonest question she gets whenever she asks, she tells people about period manipulation. And by now, you've heard the reasons why people can take certain steps to manipulate their period. Of course, contact your doctor before you take any action. Everything we say here today is a general topic, and this does not stand in as a medical advice until you contact your medical doctor and you're properly checked before you're started on any pill or otherwise. Dr. Ogochukwu, I don't know if you have any further words for your audience listening today.
Yes, I just want to say that whenever I talk to a group of women, the PCOS issue always comes up. That's probably the biggest question. I think we have an increased rate of PCOS in.
Wow, isn't that bigger than fibroid? Because I think fibroid used to be the bigger question.
You're right. You're right. But I think fibroids are so prevalent. And, most people have an aunt or mom or someone who has fibroids. I think people just know more about it. And fibroids
Okay.
are a physical manifestation. So they're easier to understand, I think. Big
Yeah.
fibroids or even small fibroids, bleeding, issues with bad periods and fertility.
Yeah.
PCOS has so many hormonal and physical sometimes manifestations that I think it's a little bit harder to understand, harder to diagnose, and harder to treat. And then all the other things that come with it: hirsutism, irregular periods, etc. But yes, I'm going to talk about PCOS. I'm going to talk about optimizing fertility. So if you have PCOS or if you don't, ways to optimize fertility. And as I said at the beginning, every time you talk about fertility, before you go into fertility, you have to know about the menstrual cycle. In Nigeria and all over the world, fertility is a huge issue. It's one of the most heartbreaking issues that women deal with. We all know someone who has not been able to have a baby. very heartbreaking, very, very difficult. It can end a marriage. It can result in a lot of scorn and um, derision in the community, unfortunately. So I want ladies to start early, to know about their cycles, to manage any issue that they're having early, so that they will optimize their fertility. This is not to say that if you're having problems with fertility that it's your fault at all, but there's some minor things that people can do just to make sure that you don't get to age 35 or 40, and then you're trying to have wondering why you don't have a period and wondering why you haven't been able to get pregnant. And I just wanted to say also that I took your data SPSS course. That was a great course. Uh, Everybody sign on to Thummim. It's a very wonderful site. And optimizing fertility will be coming shortly.
All right, thank you very much for your time. And when you mentioned about my data, because I just laughed because I didn't even want to mention that. Yes, I'm also an independent instructor, so I
Yeah.
do what I preach. I'm not, I'm not just prophesying or just talking blab. I also took another person and I also created my course. So yes, I'm a preacher of what I'm a doer of what I preach. And you can also see that Dr.
That's right.
Ogochukwu is here also doing the same thing that we are talking about. She has taken my course and she's creating her own course too. You too should have this wonderful experience. It's a life-changing one because when you remember that some people's lives are changed because they encountered the knowledge you have. I mean, it's something to go to bed with, and it's quite fascinating to experience that. I'll quickly put up about Dr. Kochuku again for those that didn't join in when I was talking about her. And if we have further questions, we'll attend to that. Otherwise, we'll be happy to say thank you to Dr. Gochuku who made her time to join us today. So you can see our fine guys there, and she is a board certified Harvard educated obstetrician and gynecologist who has a passion for writing and teaching. And she's been a doctor for almost 20 years. And she has special interest in PCOS and fertility. PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome. She has two wonderful daughters, 8 and 10, and she's passionate once again about the Rotary Club and service. I think there are some emphasis there on the Rotary Club and
Yep.
service. And of course, she is an independent instructor with Tumim NG. Thank you, Doc, for gracing our stage today and sharing your wonderful knowledge with us. I'm sure before now, people really did not even know that yes, periods can be manipulated. Talk more of knowing why and how it can be manipulated, or even the possible if it has consequences or not. But anyone who has encountered this session and paid attention could see yes, there are possibilities, and you can actually still have a life because you're still you're a woman and you don't have to get withdrawn doing many things because you're afraid of the monthly menstrual periods. Thank you once again, and let me quickly check the comment section. Okay, we don't have further comments here or questions, so I think we've done justice to any question that came up, and we are happy to
Thank you,
say
Dr. STM.
thanks a lot. Once again, I'm your host, Dr. Ifunaya Stella Maris. I am commonly known as Dr. STM. And thanks once again for joining us. And will please do us a favor to subscribe to our YouTube channel where we drop content like this. We have a robust topics discussing with our independent instructors. We've had a discussion on social media management, on education. Join us, subscribe, and stay in touch as we bring up more content coming up for you. Thank you, Dr. Gochuku, and thanks everyone for joining. Let's call
Bye
it a
bye.
day. Bye.